I'm Louise Petre. I'm the head of user research in a part of the government digital service that does things with data. I've worked in digital for a long time. Most of it was in the public sector and third sectors. I've worked on a variety of different sorts of projects in the civil service, including things like standards and guidance. I've worked in the capability space, worked in assurance. I worked on the AI playbook, and I worked on gov.uk for a really long time. Um, and over the past few years, my role has involved working with and learning about communities and why they're just excellent and what they need to flourish. But my very first project in the civil service was on data.gov.uk. So I feel like coming back to the data space, I've come full circle. And it's always interesting to come back to a thing and see it from a new perspective. Now I'm part of the data sharing team in GDS, and I'm working on understanding the data landscape or the ecosystem from the point of view of the people involved. We do user research to understand people and their needs, and we use things like personas and mindsets and journeys, various kind of artifacts to illustrate the experience of individuals. Coming back to work on data, the thing that has really struck me is that while it's important to learn about individual experiences, it's the relationships across the system that I think we really need to dig into. And this means shifting how we approach the research and how people are involved in the work. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what user research is, the challenges and opportunities of using user research to understand people and data, and some of the ideas about what we might want to do differently. And then I'd really, really love to hear your thoughts. So just to start with, I just thought I'd cover what user research is. Is there anyone on the call who's worked with a user researcher or done some user research? Yes, excellent. Yay. um, it's always really great to hear people are doing it and worked with this. We always get very excited. So from my point of view, I just wanted to kind of talk you through what it means to me. So when I was a kid, I used to love books by Richard Scarry. I don't know if any of you have encountered Richard Scarry. I can see a thumbs up there. Really loved them. And this is an illustration from one of his books called What Do People Do All Day? And it was a real favorite. I really love the little funny details and the way it captures these complex things that we don't always see. Working as a user researcher often reminds me of these books because we're essentially trying to understand what people do all day, where they do things, who they interact with, what stops them getting things done, what helps them, how they feel about it. We get to see the complexity of things and help the teams we work with to understand it too. I've had the opportunity to learn about all sorts of things and hear stories of people's experiences. So I've worked on things like adopting a greyhound, working in prisons, owning a historic ship, working or interacting with the government. And from the point of view of my current role, this illustration has an additional significance because it's not showing us a journey as such or a transaction. It's the kind of spaces where you often see user research happening. It's showing us a series of processes, how individuals and organizations fit into those processes, the things that are passed between them and the things that make things work. And implicit in all of this is a series of relationships that make it all happen. So back when I worked on data.gov.uk, I looked at a lot of diagrams that looked roughly like this. But we know that there are people everywhere in these diagrams, and we try lots of ways of understanding what they need. And we know that data problems are really about people and culture. And then the scope starts to get bigger and bigger when you're doing user research and you're thinking about it like this. We try to structure and simplify what we're trying to understand. It's easy to get stuck thinking about these kind of questions. And they're all really necessary questions. You know, who is using our data? What are they doing with it? What is data anyway? but these kind of questions can quickly take us down some really deep rabbit holes. Um, the world of data is really complex, and that means the answers to these questions are always varied and they're constantly changing. So a few years ago, I went to a conference and heard this fantastic talk by a woman called Jen Manuel. And she'd been using an approach called relationship centered design in her work at the Ministry of Housing, Community and Local Government. So she shared this quote from David Robinson, who works on the Relationship Project. She talked us through the work her team had done, combining user centered and relationship centered approaches. As a person whose job involves a lot of relationships and relationship building, this really struck a chord. They've used this approach to understand some really complex and nuanced things. So when I came back to the data space, I found I was fascinated by how much of what we talk about is connected to the quality and effectiveness of our relationships. So we talk about sharing, trust, participation, fear, risk, harm, responsibility to others. We're interested in how we prove things to each other, how we understand what another person's done with the data, how we might collaborate, how we build communities. I've done so many user research sessions in which someone says, when they've been working out what they can do with some data, they usually want to speak to a human. So as a user researcher, I really want to understand these relationships around data better. I want to make sense of this wonderful messiness in a useful way, because I think the way into the complexity is to look at the connections, the networks, the relationship, because that's key to building stronger, more productive and collaborative connections. So that is my very short and snappy, just whistle stop tour through what I've been thinking about with user research and data. And I had a question for all of you, actually. I mean, does this resonate? Have you done anything like this? And how have you done it? And I'm really interested to hear your thoughts. So thanks, everybody.